Hey everyone, I'm Davin Chitwood here with Kirkham Iron Tech. Today I have our founder and CEO, Tom Kirkham. And Tom, it's been a while since we did the last video, and I was curious to talk about IT and cybersecurity, but specifically for manufacturers. And I was wanting to get your thoughts on that. Let me know what you think.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty broad question, Davin, but
Yeah.
let me see if I can tackle everything. There's a lot
Yeah.
of look, there are, we talk a lot about professional service firms, right? Accounting and finance and law firms and on and on and on. But we have a significant number of manufacturers that we work with, and they almost always have unique needs.
Yeah.
Regardless if we're talking about cybersecurity or IT infrastructure. They generally have CAD machines. They
Mhm.
possibly and probably have CNC machines or other industrial type control systems or anything that's sometimes they're embedded systems.
Mhm.
That's a unique cybersecurity threat that has to be taken into consideration. Air gapping those
Mhm.
computers is not good enough. It increases your risk by just assuming air gapping them is going to protect them from hackers. Depends on the risk profile, of course.
Yep.
And then you get the whole back office situation. So manufacturers, the numbers that you hear me say, roughly 10% of gross revenue should be your IT infrastructure and cybersecurity budget. And I mean all of it. That's servers or cloud or awareness training, whatever. It's 10% of gross revenue. Those numbers don't apply usually to manufacturing companies. And I would go so far as to say that you need to know, depending on what type of manufacturer you are, you kind of have to know what your peers are doing. And that generally goes around a ratio of office workers versus production line workers. And then on the production line, you got to figure out how many devices need to be protected. And I'm not just talking about PCs. I'm talking about these embedded systems and routers and switches. Almost always there's some sort of warehousing, and there's a lot of Wi-Fi
Mhm.
access points and other devices that you've got to make sure those are included in risk assessments. Not to mention, many manufacturers have intellectual property that
Yeah.
they don't want to have stolen by Chinese or others, right?
Mhm.
So there is a unique risk profile. But one thing that's really clear is the financial impact on a manufacturer can be much greater than a professional service firm, because we're generally talking about the ability just to manufacture your product. Not to, that starts affecting deliverability, scheduling,
Mhm.
shipping, logistics, not to mention disappointing customers and other things like that. And
Reputation.
so it
Yeah.
can impact the top line revenue and the bottom line revenue much quicker. And so if you don't include these embedded systems, at least in the risk analysis, so you understand what your risk is if you choose not to protect them. If
Mhm.
you think air gap's good, sometimes it is, but usually at some point you might be sorry, and it's not very expensive to protect those devices anyway, for
Mhm.
the most part. And so you get into specialized needs. We talk about EDRs or MDRs or XDRs. These are endpoint detect and respond
Yeah.
tools, and the corresponding service, right? It's not, you're not really just paying for the tool, you're paying for the service, really,
Mhm.
and as you are with everything that we do. But you've really got to look at, on especially these embedded devices and network switches and access points, you've got to have a software tool known as a SIEM, SIEM. And this detection and monitoring tool, from a cybersecurity standpoint, is specifically there to ingest logs to look for suspicious behavior. Okay, those devices can be protected. It's a little different than an endpoint. We can't just install Sentinel-1 on all of those. That's a real best in class EDR, MDR, XDR, whatever you want to call it, because these are embedded systems. You have no idea of knowing what the operating system is. It's like a printer, and printers have been hacked. And so you've got to have a way to monitor those to make sure they're not affected, or like I said, just understand the risk that you're taking, but especially if it's connected to the network. If it's connected to your local area network, it may be siloed off from the internet, but that doesn't mean that one of the other computers that are in the back office can hit it, right? Any other devices on the network could be a threat vector, phone systems and so on and so forth. And so I got, you got to remember that even though you've got 50 to 100 employees, maybe in your manufacturing facility, but you only have 5 people that have PCs and maybe one server, or it's all in the cloud, that doesn't make your risk go away. Your risk could be the same or greater than a 10-person accounting firm. So you've got to really think that through and get a proper risk analysis done.
Yeah. And to add on to that, the first step is having that risk assessment done, understanding your potential vulnerabilities, and then building a plan to, of course, address those vulnerabilities. And then one of the most important and often overlooked aspects of cybersecurity is that recovery plan, or that disaster recovery plan, where if something does happen in the event of an actual cyber attack, what do you do now? How do you eliminate as much loss as possible by being able to recover and get back up and running as fast as possible? And that should be part of your security assessment, and your overall cybersecurity plan is having the preventative measures, defensive measures in place. But if something does happen, what do we do from here? And
yeah, well, if you're a manufacturer, you have standard operating procedures.
Yes.
And the same thing applies to IT infrastructure, cybersecurity. You should be, you're going to run, you got a life of any business equipment, any manufacturing machine. That's a return on investment. And everyone in manufacturing knows that. How long is the payback going to be in this $1 million piece of equipment? Same thing in IT infrastructure. Same thing in cybersecurity, although for a different purpose, right? It's much cheaper to prevent an attack than it is to recover from an attack. But there's no such thing as 100% defense. As a managed security service provider, and I've said this many, many times, but if this is your first time watching, our job is not to get you 100% protected. Anybody that can tell you they can do that, they're just flat out wrong. I mean, the NSA themselves have been breached, and their cyber weapons were stolen. So if they can be breached, anyone can be breached. Our job is to get you from a 5, 10, or 15% chance of having a breach in any given year. We want to get that down to a 0.1 or a 0.01% chance, because it's much, much cheaper, less expensive, better return on investment to spend just 10% of that entire IT and cybersecurity budget, investing it in the right tools and the right services to prevent these attacks from occurring. That's what you really need to do. And this is known as corporate governance. The policies and procedures that you put in place to minimize the risk to your business.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting that you mentioned governance. It's something that's been added to NIST, the NIST assessment, basically the gold standard regarding cybersecurity and understanding your risk for really any organization. And governance, really corporate governance, is not going to go away anytime soon, but it definitely is going to be more part of your cybersecurity plan forever now. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yes, I definitely want to take that first step, I need that assessment, we haven't had one done yet, feel free to reach out. We actually offer a free cybersecurity and risk assessment that will work with you to evaluate what you currently have, reveal any potential vulnerabilities, and then work with you to build that plan to get to that 0.01% of that cybersecurity risk. Now, if you have any questions or any other specific topics you want us to touch on, feel free to reach out. We'll have more videos coming soon, but thank you all for tuning in.